What's going on, everyone? So today's video is actually going to be all about picking our first character class for our new PCs that are sitting down at the table for their first session ever. Now, this can be very intimidating and complicated, but my general recommendations is to avoid spellcasters and just go straight with a martial character. A martial character, being the barbarian fighter or the monk. So without further ado, we're going to jump into this actually really quick, but in case you haven't been here before, my name is Howie. This is Blue Collar DM YouTube channel. I stream on Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Twitch. Link for that Twitch stream is going to be down in the description. There we talk about Dungeon Master prep, world building, PC character creation. We talk about virtual tabletops, and I answer any questions that you guys have. So come on down there and I'll answer some of your questions about games and whatever specific situations kind of going on in yours. Now, without further ado, let's actually just jump into the video. When we talk about new players playing Dungeons and Dragons for the first time, we typically, let's come to an agreement here right away. We're always going to be first to think of what are the martial characters they're going to play if they've never played the game before. Because if you don't want to overwhelm a player with all those new rules and stuff like that, all the mechanics of combat and all that, I mean, you're going to have to give it that to them eventually. But the best way to kind of break them into it is to give them a player character class that's not going to overly complicate and give them too many resources to manage and too many choices to make. So that's why we're going to kind of jump into the martial characters. So I think we can all agree that the martial characters are going to be the easiest ones to use. So when we jump over to my screen share here in just 1 second, we're actually going to see that I've got the pre-generated character list here from D&D Beyond, or not D&D Beyond, from the Wizards of the Coast. And I actually will go over some of the character sheets for level 1 characters that they have pre-produced here. But I would even say when you're introducing a new player, I would gravitate towards picking anything out of this list right here. I would avoid any of the scoundrels, the mages, and the healers for the reasons that we talked about. Just simpler ways to kind of present the mechanics and stuff like that. And the three basic classes they have here are going to be your fighter, your barbarian, and your monk. And when we look at the barbarian itself, it's pretty simple. It's one of those classes that the biggest resource it's going to have is its rage, and it's also going to use weapons. So when we look into kind of the whole table for the barbarian here, it's going to get the most hit points. It's going to have all these proficiencies. We're not going to really worry about that with our first character. For our new players, we're going to basically, my recommendation is if you have a new player who's coming into the game for the first time ever and they're just sitting down at your table, I wouldn't go through the character creation process with them. If it's just a one-shot and you're trying to introduce them to the game, give them something to play with, give them some dice to hold on to, give them something to look at and chew on, and then jump into it. And then if they end up getting hooked, then you can talk about character creation. But for right now, I would just grab one of those pre-generated character sheets like we had over here, because you'll see how complicated it gets. So we have rage. We know what rage does if we know barbarians at all. But you're going to get your advantage on your strength checks and saving throws. When you make a weapon attack, you can add some rage damage. You have resistance to certain damages. So that's actually one of the reasons why I think that the Barbarian is not the greatest class to choose for a first-time player, because there are a lot of certain special case instances in combat, especially when things can get kind of crazy and people get nervous and they're like trying to figure out what they're supposed to do and they're looking at their character sheet trying to find the different items. So my recommendation is, from that standpoint, is that I don't recommend Barbarian, just because of the simple fact that there is a lot of special case things with this rage ability, that you're going to get resistance to certain damages, you're going to add damage to certain rolls depending on what you make. Luckily, you have this unarmored defense, so you don't have to worry about telling the player that armor matters. They just have a base armor class that they just play with. You also have this reckless attack and danger sense. Again, more situational kind of things that our player needs to worry about. And then we get into our primal paths, extra attack, all that kind of stuff. So when you're talking about a new player starting for the first time, you're not really going to worry so much about progressing beyond the first couple levels, so something to think about there. But then also, as they kind of continue, they're going to get a lot more of those, they're going to get extra attacks. We can attack twice. Their speed is going to move a little bit more. They're going to get this feral instinct that's going to give them advantage on initiative rolls. They're going to get brutal critical to do extra dice when they crit. They're going to get the relentless rage, so they can keep their rage, or they can actually not die outright, and they can make a constitution saving throw. Brutal critical, even more damage when they hit with a crit. They're also going to get that persistent rage. The brutal critical, again, is going to go up. The indomitable might, so that way your strength checks are always basically overpowered. And then you're going to get your primal champion with your strength and constitution scores increasing at level 20, with the max score being 24. So that's a basic breakdown of the barbarian, kind of just a quick quick and dirty kind of look. Like I said, for a first-time player, I wouldn't recommend the Barbarian just because of the fact there are these kind of special case type things and abilities that are going to kind of confuse your characters for level 1. If we actually look into the actual character sheet for the Barbarian, you can actually still see it here. You have your rage. It's got all this text of things that your players have to make sure that they understand as they're going through it. And then they also have 3 attacks to choose from. This is the human barbarian pre-generated character sheet that we talked about before. They're just going to get a lot of stuff, and in all honesty, it's not going to be easy it's not as easy as some of the other classes can be, and we'll talk about those in a second. So let's jump into the fighter. So I'm going to download the fighter thing real quick because for whatever reason my Adobe cannot handle having more than one PDF open at the same time. So welcome to struggles. The struggles of streaming and trying to do everything all at once. But we have our human fighter here, so we're going to see that we're going to have some interesting stuff here as well. But when we jump over to the fighter class here in D&D Beyond, we can actually see that it's not too complicated. So I don't want to get into the weeds of like, oh, fighter is super, super complicated. It's not that complicated, to be perfectly honest with you. But there are certain things about it that make it kind of difficult, and we'll talk about that. So the first thing we're going to get, we got the D10 hit die like we talked about before. We got weapons, we got armor proficiencies, we've got skills, we got all this stuff. Armor is going to be a factor with our players. So if our player ever decides to buy armor, he's going to have to learn how to do an AC calculation later on down the line. Something to think about. But still, like I said, give your players a character sheet, let them work with that, and then if they decide that they're hooked, then you can help them make a new character. Fighting style. So then if you are going to go jump in and actually have a pre-gen character sheet, like this one's not as huge of a deal, but even still, there are certain cases when certain fighting styles matter. So if you're doing archery, you're going to be getting a +2 bonus to attack rolls with specifically ranged weapons. If you're wearing armor for a defensive fighting style, you're going to get a bonus to your AC, which is static, so not too complicated. You got dueling, which, excuse me, you've got dueling, which allows you to wield one melee weapon in one hand when you're wielding no other weapons and getting a +2 to damage rolls with that weapon. You've got great weapon fighting, you got protection, you got a lot of choices here at level 1 is basically what I'm trying to say. So something to think about, especially when you're dealing with a new player that's sitting at the table and wants to make a character sheet. There's a lot of choices to be made here at level 1, which can be kind of intimidating. You also get second wind, which you can heal yourself some way at level 1, and you're going to get your action surge at level 2, which allows you to use an action, but you can only use your action to do an attack or move, or basically take an additional action. Then you get into your martial archetypes. Like I said, we're not going to go over those today, but peruse those at your leisure. Champion fighters are usually one of the easiest fighter to take, in my opinion, because basically their entire thing is just basically changing what your crit dice is, and they're going to get you better athletics checks. But ability score improvements, like usual, we got an extra attack. We're going to get 3 attacks at level 11. Level 20, we're going to get 4. Indomitable, we're going to get the ability to re-roll a saving throw. We're going to get another extra attack like we talked about. And then the extra attack. The extra attack. And like I said, when we look at this, it's not too complicated because we got the fighting style protection for this guy. But even still, with the fighting style protection, when you see a creature that you see within 5 feet targets another creature other than you 5 feet away from you, you can use a reaction to pose disadvantage on the attack roll, and you must be wielding a shield. So very specific cases for when you can use it. You've got second wind where you can regain hit points. Just something for them to worry about rather than, if they didn't have something with an ability like that, something to consider. We've also got multiple items to attack with. We got a longsword, a pike, and a javelin. Again, we're going to have other things, and we have this reaction. We're going to have bonus actions. We're going to have a lot of stuff here with our human fighter at level 1 that we wouldn't necessarily have with a monk, which we are going to get into. And that's actually, ironically, even though I'm going to be pulling up the halfling monk, so there's going to be some special cases in here with the halfling monk because it's not a human. But for the most part, ignore the halfling traits. You get martial arts and unarmored defense. You can actually even cross out this short sword and this dart and just tell your character to punch people. You're done. That simple. But when we look at this monk, we actually will see, like we said, the basic things it's going to get at level 1, unarmored movement and martial arts. Okay, so now you can punch. And it's already on your player character sheet. It's already really set for you. It's all kind of set up for you, especially on this sheet. Like, nothing changes here. It's going to stay as a +5 to hit. You don't have to worry about, specific damage types. I would even say don't even bother giving them a short sword. Be like, hey, you punch things because you're a monk. That's basically it. Key is there are certain things you have, but it's an easy resource to manage. So you have key points. You want to attack more? Spend a key point. You want to take the dodge action so you don't get hit? Spend a key point. You want to move further? Spend a key point. That's it. It's that easy to figure out. Like, you spend a point. Whereas with a barbarian, you're raging and then you have all these special cases, but basically you're going to get these like, okay, so at level 1, you're going to learn the game, learn how to punch, learn how to attack, stuff like that. Okay, now we're going to add a new level. All you have to worry about is managing these points, and you're going to get 3 things you can do with these points. It's really quite that easy. I don't know how much more simpler I can make it, but it's really that easy. You're gonna, your movement's gonna increase as you gain levels and stuff like that. You're never gonna wear armor because you're gonna have the natural armor, so we're not gonna have to worry about that. If they eventually want to take on weapons and stuff like that, and they want to worry about that kind of stuff, that's totally fine. You can ease them into that without having them have to worry about managing which weapon to use in certain situations. Just tell them to go punch. Or if you're really worried about it, you can give them that dart and the punch. There's no need to really give them a melee weapon if you don't want to. Or you just make their melee weapon a d6 just to make their lives easier. As they continue to keep going, they're going to get extra attack, they're going to get slow fall. They are going to pick their monastic tradition at level 3, which again we're not going to cover, but Way of the Open Hand is one of the easiest ones to use. Deflect missiles, which really cool ability, requires a reaction, and oftentimes most monks that I play with miss forget it anyway, so like if you're a first time player, once you get to 3rd level, like adding this like little wrinkle of the deflect missiles isn't too big of a thing. Slow fall, you're going to reduce falling damage. A lot of the things with the monk, which is really nice, is that they're passive or they just require spend a key point. Spend one of your resource that you have a lot of eventually. Stunning strike does what it sounds like. Key empowered strikes, now your punches are magical, so now you don't have to worry about magic items and having to worry about having a magical weapon. It's already taken care of for you, pretty easy. We've got evasion here. We also, so it's going to take less damage, depending on if it's an AoE effect. Stillness of mind, we can't be charmed or frightened. You see how a lot of these things are really passive abilities that you don't have to really worry about all that much. They just kind of exist. Purity of body, master key, makes you immune to disease and poison. Unarmored movement, you keep moving faster. Tongue of the sun and moon, you learn all spoken languages. Diamond soul, you gain proficiency in all saving throws. You also can spend a key point to re-roll your saving throw when you fail. Unarmored movement, you're going to go faster. Timeless body, you don't get old. Empty body, you can spend 4 key points to be invisible. You can also do astral projection if you want to, whatever. Unarmored movement, continue to keep getting faster, and you're just more key points. So, like I said, pretty simple as we kind of move forward, especially at level 1, just because of the fact that you basically punch. You're a guy that punches, and you punch a lot. That's pretty much it. So that basically is a quick and dirty breakdown on my recommendation, at least for newer players, is go with this monk. Especially if it's a new player that's not sold on the game yet. I started out as a monk. It made my life way easier when I first played the game for the first time when I had no clue what I was doing. I grabbed this halfling monk. I love the fact that I had lucky for fun. That was a fun little flavor thing. But you can easily make this a human monk very easily for your players by making a character sheet for them. Give them that ability to punch. They have all their things listed out. Makes their life really easy. It'll make your life really easy as a dungeon master, especially if you have an experienced play group who's used to making really cool characters. You can give a player a monk to try out for a little bit. And then if they end up deciding that they want to challenge themselves and go with a fighter or a barbarian, or maybe they want to try a caster, they can do that too. So things to keep in mind as you're kind of teaching your new players how to play this really amazing game, and just make your life and make their lives easier, so that way you can get more people to play D&D, so that way our community continues to grow and continues to flourish. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is actually going to end this video on how to pick your first player character class for your new players that are sitting down at the table the first time. So a lot of this has been geared kind of towards dungeon masters and making the recommendations. Now, if you're a player character or you're a person that's gonna be a player character for the first time, and you've got questions on kind of some of the general mechanics, put some questions down there in the comments section. Also, check out the live stream. I'll be able to answer your questions there Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Twitch. Link for that Twitch stream is down in that description. And like I said, we talk about PC prep, or PC character creation, world building, game prep, all that kind of stuff for dungeon masters and player characters, in addition to how to use some of the most popular virtual tabletops and kind of the nitty gritty on how to kind of jump into those as well. Also, if you want to check out more of this content, you guys want to get notified, make sure you subscribe, like the video, all that fun stuff here on YouTube, but also make sure you check out some of my other social medias like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I also post on there so that way you guys get alerted to kind of like when the next video is going to come out, and also what's kind of other cool stuff like memes and stuff like that, what I'm about to stream, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to be up to date with anything that's going on here with the channel, with the Blue Collar DM, then you can find all that information there. I hope you guys learned something here about kind of figuring out your first player character and kind of like how the game is, you know, kind of simpler when you take a lot of the spell casting and some of that stuff out. But there's even some player character classes, like the monk, that make things really, really easy, especially when you can just punch people. So I hope you guys learned something, and until next time, happy gaming. That was a fun pause, right?